Hi, I'm Corey Barlog, director of God of War 2.
I'm Ray from BioWare.
This is Julian Eggebrecht.
Hi, I'm pt.1 from Sierra.
And you are watching...
And you're watching...
And you are watching IGN Weekly.
Hello, loyal IGN fans, and welcome to another episode of IGN Weekly, coming at you from lovely Las Vegas, Nevada, for the 2007 DICE Summit. Today we get to talk to some of the industry veterans about the future of gaming as well as their predictions for E3. Later on, we head on over to the Hard Rock Cafe to talk to some of the show's award winners. All this and much more coming at you next.
Well, of all time, my personal favorite gaming platform is the Apple II, because that's my first, and you always remember your first.
I'm probably one of the few people who'd say this to you today, but I obviously think that I've had a PlayStation 3 for less than 2 months. I honestly think that right now it's probably the greatest console I've owned.
My favorite system of all time is the Virtual Boy.
Honestly, if you were to do an overall lifetime kind of count of the platform I've played the most games on, it's probably one of the portable Nintendo systems.
My favorite game system of all time, and this may be a little bit of a cheating answer, but I think it's the PC. I think if you look at it's the only console that I've played all the way through.
Obviously, there's quite a bit of the market has moved over to consoles, but I still find the PC to be a superior play platform as well as a superior development platform. So that's definitely been my favorite.
It depends on what the games you're playing, because in the end, the system isn't the thing, it's actually software that supports the system. And if you have a great game, that makes any system the best system at the time when you're playing it.
I'll tell you, making games right now, it's a bit more complex than it used to be back in the day.
Game development throughout the last 20 years, which my career almost spans by now, has gone from being a garage mentality with just 3 people, sometimes, or even a single guy. I remember the C64 days back in Europe, to being this massive undertaking of an army of people.
When I first started making games, I mean, I was an amateur first, making text adventures on a CP/M-based machine back, in the early 80s, and there's no money in it. There was no business.
And so my first games were written on, as an example, either punch cards or strips of paper tape was actually where most of mine came on. And there was no video terminal. It was a teletype that would make printouts on paper was the output.
When I first started, SNES and Gen games were often, anywhere between, 300,000 and, maybe $1 million would be a huge game.
And now we're at the point where we have just dozens of guys working on a project. It's a massive amount of coordination, resulting in essentially a very complex combination of essentially design, art, and technology.
Now you're dealing with tens of millions of dollars for game development, and the manpower on the team size has changed because of the complexity of the code. You just need more people.
Video games have huge cultural impact. They are a legitimate worldwide entertainment medium, and that means that the ambition is realized, but the opportunity and the responsibility is even greater.
Right now, I think it's a lot tougher now than it was back then, because back then we didn't have much of a higher bar. Now the bar keeps, being raised with every new game, and we have to adjust accordingly.
These days, you can do almost realistic art, realistic modeling, realistic animations, and I think something's actually been lost in that, because now you can actually just throw some technology at the problem in the art, and you end up with games that maybe aren't as memorable looking, because if you've been around as long as I have, you really think back to the games of the early days and how much personality they had, and you hope that somehow that'll happen again.
There is sort of a cyclical element that I like in games right now, which seems to be a return to people actually trying to make games that are fun.
What you see happening right now today in development is that these games have become so large, take so many years, so many dollars, and the return is so risky that there's a fairly reasonable movement of people saying, as opposed to continue to push that curve, what can we do to create entertainment that is more cost and time manageable?
Of course, moving forward, E3 is changing now. When we think about that spectacle, that was expensive. And so all the folks that paid into that were thinking, wow, can we use this money in a better way?
It was pretty clear to almost everyone. In fact, even before we heard that E3 was going to change formats, we already were going like, this is ridiculous. This is not a good investment of time or money.
With Mythic and Dark Age of Camelot, we had a great booth and we actually got noticed, and that's how we got one of the reasons the media took us seriously and we got to the big time. I don't know if you could do that these days, because to make that impression, you would have to spend so much money. I just don't know if it's worth it.
I think E3 is essentially being moved towards a concentrate of what E3 used to be, right? It's kind of a refocusing.
To be honest, when I first heard that E3 was no longer, I was like, yes!
E3 is horrible.
E3 is probably the worst place in the world you can take a look at a game. It's loud, it's noisy, there's a billion things different, going on.
I think that publishers now are realizing that it makes a lot more sense to have small press junkets, that's the word for it, is a junket, where they rent out a nice hotel, they bring out 30 journalists, they have a bunch of rooms set up, and the journalists have fun, have a few drinks, play the game, and write about it.
All I know is that it's somewhere in LA and it's a smaller event and not as many people are going, which from our side of things is probably a better, more pleasant experience.
Publishers, I think, are going to be happier to get more bang for their buck as far as articles about their games and whatnot. And it's not this crazy zoo that it evolved into. I think it's a bit of a maturing of the industry. I don't think we need that much of a dog and pony show in order to let a great game shine through and reach the journalists and reach the press that we want to reach.
The next 5 years are going to be really interesting. The next 10 years, obviously we're going to see another console shift. From a technology point of view, we're shifting into heavy concurrency.